Hey guys, it's Callus here with more Pokemon Perfect content. This time we are switching over to good old Gen 1. We have a top 8 match here between... You know what, I'm not really that familiar with this player. To me, that name looks like Louna. I don't know how to pronounce that, so we're going to go with Louna. I'm very familiar with the other player, though. On the other side, we've got Ebola, who is a lot of things. He is recently unbanned from Pokemon Perfect after being banned for quite some time by the previous powers that be. He is one of the tournament favorites, for sure, because he's one of the best RBY players in the world. And to back that claim up, he is actually the Smogon Championship RBY champion. So this guy can really, really play, regardless of whatever you may think about his personality. So for me, this is a match. It's interesting because it's someone that I'm really unfamiliar with. All I know is that Luna's French, but I mean, whatever, that doesn't tell you anything. And then Ebola's been on top of the RBY world pretty much this year and in recent times. This guy's really, really good. So I'm very curious how this plays out. I love when there's two opposites, or at least in my mind opposites, when it's someone that I'm really familiar with versus someone I've never heard of. And this is for a spot in the top 4. We are very deep in the tournament. Both these guys have beaten several opponents to get to this point. It is a best of 3, and here is the first game. So, Luna's on the bottom. Jinx is one of the 4 leads that you see most commonly in RBY. Starmie is probably the most common lead in the game these days. And they're both going to opt to stay in. Starmie is faster, gets Thunder Wave off. Jinx does not get her move off, which was probably a Lovely Kiss. There's a Psychic with a Specs drop. Lovely Kiss going to miss now. Here's a crit for Ebola and another Specs drop. So a lot of things going his way. And there's another Lovely Kiss miss. So very favorable start for Ebola. Louna didn't get anything done there. The Starmie's not even statused. And it's going to switch out safely from the opposing Chansey as the Jinx comes back in. Starmie comes back in. He liked the matchup before. He's going to try it again. And finally, on the 3rd attempt, the Lovely Kiss is going to connect. Starmie pulls it back to Chansey. We end up with Chansey on Lax. Good switch for Louna. Typically a favorable matchup for Lax. There's Thunder Wave and there's Earthquake. Does not do a check for counter. And Soft Boiled. Body Slam. Counter doesn't actually reflect back Earthquake in Gen 1. I was just wondering if you would check for it at all by switching or whatever. But I guess in a way Earthquake is a check for it because Counter in Gen 1 actually only bounces back normal and fighting type moves, which is interesting. So here's Ebola fishing for Para. Hasn't found it yet, but he's just waiting for full Para. He's just clicking Soft Boiled over and over and over until eventually the Lax doesn't move and then he'll switch. And full Para does kick in now. We end up with Lax on Lax. And once again the Jinx comes back in. Still at 51% from before. There is a sleep clause, so he's not going to be able to put something else asleep. Ebola with a critical hit here on the way in from Body Slam. Goes for Amnesia here, feeling like he's in no danger. He's probably right. Lax full Paras. Here's Gengar trying to come in on Self-Destruct. And that actually might have been an unlucky full Para because he may have gone for Self-Destruct that turn. And he may have actually been prevented from doing it because he was paralyzed. Hard to say. But it was a good play for Ebola to bait that out. It very well may have worked, but we'll never know because of the full Para. So Eggs comes in, and the last poke for Ebola, even though it's unrevealed, is clearly, definitely going to be Tauros. It's an absolute mandatory Pokemon in RBY. The lead goes to Ebola as he knocks out Jinx, and Zapdos comes in here. That's good news for Louna because we know the opponent's not going to have a ride-on in this particular game, which is probably the best counter for it. Thunder Wave comes down on Chansey. Soft Boiled happens anyway through the paralysis. Sand Slash comes in for Louna. Well, all of a sudden, I don't feel very qualified to narrate this game because, to be completely honest with you, I really don't know what that guy does in RBY. I know that he has Swords Dance. I know that he has Earthquake. We see here that he has Body Slam. I have no clue what the last move would be. I would think either, I guess, Rock Slide or Hyper Beam would be my best guess as to what it would do. But I don't know that I've ever seen a Sand Slash in a competitive RBY OU game. It's interesting. So it It doesn't have the attacking power of the far more common Rhydon or even the less common Golem, nor does it have Explosion, which Golem does, but it does have access to Swords Dance, which obviously after it does that, it becomes a harder hitter than either of the aforementioned pokes. It also has a weird niche in that it outspeeds Executor, which the others do not, which may matter in this match and in many matches because Executor is considered one of the quote-quote big four in RBY alongside Tauros, Chansey, and Lax. Now granted, Eggs is probably the weakest member of the big four. For teams that opt to not bring all four of the big four, that's usually the guy that gets left out, but it's still a really, really relevant poke in this meta, so the fact that Sandslash outspeeds it and those other things don't could matter. All that being said, we'll see if Sandslash matters whatsoever in this game. We've still got ourselves a 6-5 situation. Louna is currently behind. His Lax there was potentially in trouble, but Chansey full paras. Here comes Gengar, 29%. That gets Earthquaked and killed on the way in. Good play for Louna, not going for the normal move. Body Slam in this case, or Hyper Beam. Speaking of Hyper Beam, there's Tauros using it for Ebola to reclaim his lead. He now has a 5-4 advantage as we go into the Tauros mirror match, which is pretty gimmicky and luck-based. Who crits the other one? Do you Hyper Beam? Do you not? Who wins the speed tie? There's a lot of RNG here. Neither player has found a crit, so it now comes down to a speed tie. Louna, who had been slower in both of the previous turns, gets the jump here with the speed tie win, gets the Hyper Beam off, gets a second Hyper Beam off against the Eggs, but comes up just short. Psychic takes that out, and we've got ourselves a 4-3. Ebola has been up a Pokemon pretty much all game. However, the faster Sandslash does the final 2% via Earthquake on the Eggs, and we've got ourselves an even game once again. Chansey comes in for Louna. Blizzard that was aimed at the Sandslash does not do all that much to Chansey, only 10%. Soft Boiled comes down. We have a Chansey on Chansey match. One is paralyzed, one is not. Sleeping Zapdos comes in. Full Para kicks in at a bad time for Ebola. Zapdos remains asleep. Ice Beam, big chunk, but not enough. Zapdos still alive, barely. However, it is still asleep, and it will not live the follow-up Ice Beam, so Ebola once again takes the lead, now 3-2. Now Louna goes to Sandslash, trying to clean things up. Sets up the Swords Dance here. Full Para at a great time. Earthquake now at +2 is going to KO Chansey. It's going to do 72%. Here comes Lax now at a hundo. Does it have to resort to blowing up in this situation? He goes for Blizzard, and it does connect, but he's fishing for either a crit or a freeze, and he finds neither. And Sandslash actually looks like it's going to clean up. I don't know. Yeah, Starmie's been asleep 0 turns here. Now, it can wake up at any time because that was asleep via Lovely Kiss, not via rest, but he really doesn't have any window to wake up. He would have needed to do so immediately, and that is not what happens. And as such, 2 Earthquakes later, and Sandslash has cleaned up this game. It kills 3 Pokemon here and sweeps it up for the underdog Louna, who takes Game 1 off of tournament favorite Ebola on the back of a UU Pokemon, Sandslash. Pretty cool to see. Like I said, I don't know that I've ever seen a competitive RBY game with Sandslash. It's pretty cool to see that. I like when people use unusual stuff, and it obviously worked out in this instance. So, if you guys enjoyed it too, give me a thumbs up, but there's quite a bit more series to come. This is best of 3, like I said, and this is top 8, playing for a spot in the semifinals. Game 2 coming up next.